Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 735, for the 6th of November 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you from sunny Sydney, Australia. I tell you what, folks, earlier on in the week I was doing some filming on a new movie starring a very, very well-known Hollywood star, but more about that at some other time. In any case, we were filming downtown in the middle of the city between buildings in a sort of an artificial canyon these buildings make up in any major city. And the wind, I swear, was direct from the Antarctic. It was blustery, it was cold, it was bone-chilling. Sydney in November can be like this sometimes. Even though it was freezing cold, we know that spring is here? No, is it here? The dates in Australia are funny when it comes to seasons. Spring is either here or it's not far away, but there are blooms. Flowers are blooming, so spring has sprung. In Sydney anyway, maybe in Melbourne too. And they say that show business is glamorous. Coming up on this week's show, something that was glamorous was the recent CSICon in Las Vagas. And our guest reporter Rob Palmer roves around the halls at the Flamingo Hotel, and this time he bumps into David Grimes, one of the speakers at CSICon, who is a cancer researcher, and also with a friend of ours who joins us on the trivia, Susan Gerbeck's trivia every week, Ramiro Rodriguez. And finally, Rob has a few words with noted author and biologist Richard Dawkins. Following that, Adrienne Hill brings us the Australian Skeptics Newsletter once again from the land of Canada. It all makes sense, yes. The best place to read the Australian Skeptics Newsletter is Canada. Thank you, Adrienne. Then another classic report from 2016 with Jo Alabaster. Evidence, please, with Jo Alabaster. And Jo looks at biodynamic gardening. Yes, truth can be stranger than fiction. What's it all about? Find out with Jo Alabaster. Then to round off the show, it's the Trove archives. Well, this time I think we go further afield to the United States to read a review, and an interview with James Randi about his book, The Magic of Uri Geller, or as it was later titled, The Truth About Uri Geller. A fascinating little look into history. And as I mentioned in the segment, we've got these two forces throughout fiction and history. We can think about Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty. Or more recently, we have the Doctor, as in Doctor Who, and the Master. Well, for a while there, we had James Randi and Uri Geller. This comes from the mid-70s, a fascinating time in the history of skepticism. Now here's some special news for people in Sydney and surrounding areas. On the 24th of November, coming up not so many weeks away, Skeptics in the Pub is back in person at a slightly different location just around the corner from the normal Skeptics in the Pub, but that's not as important as the guests we have lined up. None other than Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, plus all the members of the ESP podcast, the European Skeptics podcast, plus Claire Klingenberg. All these people will be at Skeptics in the Pub on Thursday, the 24th of November, here in Sydney. And if you want to come along, you need to register your place. Head to Meetup and look for Ost Skeptics. I'll put a link in this week's show notes. And please register because spaces are strictly limited. You can imagine we expect a big turnout for a stellar lineup of skeptical guests. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and raid the lolly cabinet, or the candy cabinet, or the sweetie cabinet, depending on where you are in the world. Because I discovered a giant, what they call a giant lolly store here in Sydney. It's not close, have to travel a bit, but my goodness me, it's wall-to-wall sweeties. My goodness me. What did I buy? Too many things to mention. Oh, my goodness me. And plus, my favorite American drink, root beer. So while I run downstairs and have some bazooka bubblegum, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
I found another speaker who I actually saw the talk. It was fantastic. Please introduce yourself and let us know what your talk is about.
Hello, my name is David Robert Grimes. I am a scientist and author, and my talk was about critical thinking and why it's really important, and how we get it horrifically wrong so often.
And is this your first time at CSICon?
This is my first time at CSICon, yeah. I mean, it's fascinating setup, it's brilliant, but it's really nice to be here.
So I'm detecting an accent, by the way, which is not American and not Australian. So what is it?
It's lingering somewhere in between, isn't it? I'm Irish. By birth. I grew up in the Middle East. I am Irish. I lived in the UK for a long time, and I've lived in the States occasionally. So I'm a bit of a mongrel, yeah.
So what other talks did you attend, and what sticks in your mind as a really great talk?
Do you know what? I haven't seen any bad talks. I think that's high praise, because often, most conferences you go to, there's going to be one or two duds, but no, everything's been fascinating, and people, Timothy Caulfield's in particular, we just saw there, really enjoyed that one. There was excellent talks yesterday as well by Lee Mack. Is it Lee Mack? I've forgotten Lee's surname. Excellent talk. There he is now, actually. But everything's been really good. I really enjoyed Richard Wiseman's. I've seen Richard before, but he's always really good as well. So
he is hysterical. He's kind of diametrically opposite in personality of the other person from the UK here, I have to say.
I'm
Dawkins.
Oh yes, yeah. I think who else is from the UK? Richard, of course he is. Yeah. But it's nice they complement each other. So the yin and the yang. If you're going to steal Oriental culture for things.
One of the other conferences I came to here, I don't remember now if it was 2018 or 19, but the thing was a conversation between those two parts, and it was amazing.
I'd say it was funny.
Yeah. The one we saw yesterday was Dawkins interviewing Tyson, but I think Weissman interviewing Dawkins was even better.
I arranged the Dawkins Award last year, and that was when Tim Minchin got it, and that was a conversation between Tim Minchin and Richard Dawkins. That was entertaining as well. It's always good talk.
So of course, we didn't have CSICon last year. So where was that awarded? Where did that
was in Oxford, in the Sheldonian, and how I got roped into it is a long, arduous story, but that was in the Sheldonian Theatre in Oxford last year, and obviously it was just strange, the first time after a pandemic, so I somehow got roped into arranging that, but it happened and no one died. So as far as I'm concerned, win-win.
That's a win.
Success.
This day and age. Well, very nice running into you, and thank you for giving us a few words.
Well, absolutely a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions.
You as well. Thank you. I found another conference attendee to introduce to the Skeptic Zone listeners. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ramiro Rodriguez from Raleigh, North Carolina, in Triangle Skeptics, and this is my first time at the conference.
So what made you decide to come this time?
Well, I've always wanted to come to one of these skeptical conferences. I've been to Nexus, but I've never been to CSICon, and since I've been hanging out with Susan, she convinced me to take the plunge and come.
So how hanging out if she lives on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast?
So the method that we use is the weekly trivia night, which is on Thursdays.
In the U.S., right? So
in the U.S.,
for Australia, that's Friday daytime.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we have Richard join us sometimes.
Yeah, and we haven't seen him in a while though, so I don't know where he's been up to.
So, what talks did you like so far? So it's been Thursday was just the start of it, and today we've had our first full day.
I mean, Neil's talk was excellent. I thought it was kind of like a review of his book, and it's also been like a lot of topics that I've been thinking about. So I really enjoyed that one because, it was just very interesting. But I've also enjoyed like talks today. I enjoyed Susan's talk. I enjoyed
Susan Gerbic.
Yeah, Susan Gerbic's talk. Let's see. Oh, I enjoyed a talk about sports medicine. That was very interesting.
I missed that one, unfortunately. Yeah. And what are you looking forward to for the rest of the conference? Do you remember who's on the schedule? Which ones you're looking forward to seeing?
I haven't looked at the schedule, but I'm sure. I mean, it's going to be fine. I think I've been enjoying just talking to people and getting to know people and hanging out.
Actually, I've talked to a lot of people that I asked, what draws you to the conferences? And you'd be surprised at how many people say they like the speakers and the talks, but they really come for the friendships that they make over the years and meeting other skeptics, people like who are a similar mind.
Yeah. I mean, today I met John Guy, who has written a book on skepticism, and he's like a really awesome guy. And I, just started browsing his book, and so I decided to buy it, and I look forward to reading it.
Okay, so thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
So we're here at the end, practically, of CSICon. There's only a few things left today on Saturday, and then the Sunday papers. And I have run into a very special guest of CSICon. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Richard Dawkins from Oxford.
And I just recently saw you present an award to Neil deGrasse Tyson. What was that all about?
Well, every year, the CFI, the Centre for Inquiry, presents the so-called Richard Dawkins Award for a hero of rationalism. And this is the 20th time this has happened, and the 20th awardee is Neil deGrasse Tyson, the great astrophysicist and science popularizer.
He seemed to be particularly moved by this. I actually interviewed him, as a Skeptical Inquirer readers will know, in a video interview 2 months ago in preparation for CSICon. And he talked about why he doesn't generally attend skeptical conferences, but he came to this one just because you were going to award him with this prize.
That's very nice to hear. I didn't know that. But anyway, he's great fun, and the award ceremony was great. After my speech and presenting him with the award, we had an hour-long conversation on stage, which was a lot of fun, I must say.
A very unique thing to see. So I was at a previous conference, and I believe it was you and Richard Wiseman in conversation. That was fascinating, too.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was really great. So Neil gave a talk of his own, and that was a highlight, and then this was another highlight. So have you gotten to see any of the other talks?
Yes.
Any of them stand out as you as really memorable?
Oh, they've all been good. I must say. We've just been listening to Nicholas Little, the lawyer for CFI, who's conducting a lawsuit against shops that sell homeopathic remedies, these charlatan so-called medical remedies. And they seem to be doing very well, and Nick is working extremely hard. He's a very good lawyer, and it's going very well.
And it's also, when you hear him talk, you know he's taking this seriously and personally, which is interesting to hear from a lawyer, I think.
Yes, I quite agree.
Most people think lawyers are just just doing their job, but he seems to be really concerned.
Yes.
And that this is an injustice being done to the population, and it's CSI's responsibility to try to remedy this situation.
It's not just an injustice to the population, it's just lies. And
absolutely.
As a scientist, I don't disapprove of it.
So I've interviewed Michael Marshall, and he's done a great deal to try to push back on homeopathy in the UK. So what's the current status of that in your country?
I'm afraid I don't know. I am aware that King Charles III has a great soft spot for homeopathy.
He's the head of some homeopathic organization, which Michael Marshall told me.
He might well be, yes.
And now maybe he has to give that up now that he's the reigning sovereign.
That would be a good thing, yes.
So I hear that you're going to go to Australia on a trip, and the Skeptic Zone listeners might be particularly interested in that because this podcast is listened to worldwide, but it is centered in Australia. So what's
I shall be going next February on a tour of the major centres, the major cities in Australia, and then Auckland in New Zealand as well.
Oh, okay. And what's the subject of this?
I think I should be interviewed on stage, and I don't know what the subject will be, but it'll be no doubt the kind of thing I usually talk about.
I hope that goes well.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Mick West. In my podcast, Tales from the Rabbit Hole, I have extended conversations with people who have been involved in conspiracy culture. I do this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's really interesting. These people have great stories about how they fell down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, what they did down there, and what it was that helped them out. Sometimes I also talk to people who investigate conspiracy theories, and they have equally fascinating stories from the other side. Secondly, I want to understand how best to prevent the spread of conspiracy theories and misinformation, which is an increasing problem in a time when alternative media is exploding. The best way to do this is to communicate effectively with the people involved, and the best way to do that is with a nice long chat. So check it out, Tales from the Rabbit Hole. tftrh.com.
Everyone, this is Adrienne Hill from Canada, here again to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter. This is newsletter number 160. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. Happy All Hallows Day. Last week was Halloween, which meant that we were swamped with stories about ghost hauntings and ghost huntings. 30 in one day. A lot, but not unusual, even on non-hallowed days. We don't normally feature them in this newsletter because they generally involve fuzzy photos and indistinct audio, typical of a genre where enthusiasm substitutes for evidence. We await the actual definitive proof which, despite the headlines on many of those 30 stories, is still to be revealed. Meanwhile, read on. Tim. Okay, Tim, we'll do just that. The 2022 annual Australian Skeptics National Convention, or CSICon, for 2022 will be held at the National Library in Canberra on the weekend of December 3rd through 4th. And for the first time since 2019, it will be a face-to-face event, assuming the world doesn't fall back into pandemic mode, or end in a Mayan apocalypse before then. Tickets for the convention dinner on December 3rd have been released, a 3-course meal with bar tab and guest speaker for $85. The dinner is open to all, although numbers are limited. But for an extra treat, why not wrap the convention around the dinner to see and hear from a bevy of leading skeptics and scientific thinkers? And to keep the fun going, there will be social get-togethers on Friday, December 2nd at the Civic Pub in Braddon from 6 p.m. and post-convention drinks at King O'Malley's in the city from 5 p.m. All welcome, no charge, but please register your interest either via Canberra Skeptics or soon at the ticket page so we can know the expected numbers. We look forward to seeing you there. Bent Spoon Award nominations. You've still got time to put in a nomination for the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award, one of the least sought after credits in the skeptical world, or any world for that matter. If you would like to put someone forward for this non-prestigious award, then go to the Bent Spoon page for more info on how to enter, details on current nominees, and a list of past winners. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. When a poll about COVID-19 vaccines is not what it seems. This is a fact-check piece that outlines the problems with online surveys, especially one that reveals that half of all respondents said they regretted getting vaccinated against COVID-19 or were happy with their decision to remain unvaccinated. Meanwhile, quote, only 35% out of more than 45,000 people said they were vaccinated and would make the same decision again, end quote. The problem is that online polls are notoriously unreliable as they are open to stuffing of the virtual ballot box. Research into homeopathy shows, quote, numerous breaches of scientific integrity, end quote. Well, surprise, surprise. The German Homeopathy Information Network has played a key role in alerting authorities to some highly touted but errorful research into homeopathic treatment of cancer. Oh dear. They and the Austrian Initiative for Scientific Medicine had informed the Medical University Vienna about their findings. And the research director then asked the Austrian Agency for Scientific Integrity, or OEAWI, to review the paper. The analysis took some time and included not only the paper and publicly available information, but also the original data. In the end, OEAWI corroborated the HIN's findings. The results are not based on sound research, but on modified or falsified data. The fact that the faulty research was used as definitive proof of homeopathy's effectiveness only indicates what shaky ground that dubious, to put it politely, area of medicine really is. Edzard Ernst gives the story. COVID denial, gateway to conspiracy theories. One of those theories which show the reverse of the stated conclusion, that belief in conspiracies generally encourages COVID conspiracy fears. Although by doing 2 surveys months apart does show some propensity for conspiracy beliefs to multiply and feed off each other. 67% of Americans believe they've had a paranormal experience. We know that Americans tend to have a higher religious belief than many other Western nations. This survey reveals that 67% believe they've had some sort of paranormal experience, including feeling a presence or unknown energy, 37%, hearing an unexplained sound or music, 33%, smelling an unexplained odor, 30%. And as an aside, I have actually experienced these phantom smells as part of an aura before a migraine. I will smell cigarette smoke or gas, and it's very real, but when I call my family, no one else can smell it. It can be quite unnerving. And hearing the voice of someone who wasn't there, 29%. The interesting thing is that while having an experience is one thing, explaining it is another. 35% are likely to say they are otherworldly or supernatural. 29% think there is a scientific explanation that they don't know about. And 36% aren't sure about the cause. The spooky science behind Ouija boards. From ideomotor effect to the need for, quote, sense of agency, end quote, and emotional contagion. What moves the planchette? Probably not ghosts. Charles III's History of Promoting Homeopathy. Grr. This is a detailed look at some of King Charles' relationship with alt-med. This goes beyond Edzard Ernst's recent biography into some very interesting history, including the Foundation for Integrated Health that ended with some shady goings-on. Experts explain fear and fascination with supernatural. This is an interesting little article in which academics from the University of Arizona say our interest in the paranormal is a, quote, natural human impulse, end quote. A search for meaning in a world where we are not in control. Items of interest. Woohoo! Top 10 most haunted universities in the UK. You would be forgiven for assuming this list would include some of the older universities such as Cambridge and Oxford, but you would be mistaken. The list is based on the number of cemeteries, gravestones, listed buildings along with how long they've been listed, and alleged paranormal reports within 2 miles of each university campus. The University of Liverpool tops the list. Oxbridge, which is a portmanteau of Oxford and Cambridge, I didn't know that, doesn't even rate a mention. Although Oxford Brookes University, quote, the less famous of Oxford's 2 universities, end quote, does get a Guernsey. Brunch with the Dead. Ooh, that sounds fun. Probably one of the more surreal and vulgar events we've heard of, where, quote, VIPs dine with RIPs, end quote. And this is in Las Vagas, of course. This is an event where 272 guests will be greeted with a musical set and some brunch and are promised, quote, the best odds for anyone that has ever hoped to get a reading from a celebrity medium, end quote. Weird story of the week. A drunk driver blames paranormal activity for damaged car. A U.S. County Sheriff's Office released body camera video of a traffic stop where a heavily DUI suspect threatened deputies and blamed his impairment on paranormal activity. And a curse on his car that had 2 very flat tires. The silliness evolved into serious threats when the driver told a deputy he was going to, quote, break your head with a baseball bat, end quote, and, quote, skin you alive, end quote. We won't say all believers in the paranormal would do this. Far from it. But it is an edifying example of a combination of the lack of evidence and restraint. Special events for Sydney Skeptics in the Pub on the 24th of November. Our guests will be the ESP podcast, Claire Klingenberg and Dr. Carl. This event will not be streamed, so be there for the fun. For the information and to book your place, visit www.meetup.com/en-au/AUST skeptics/. That's all for now. This is Adrienne Hill signing off from the land of snowstorms, skidoos, chinooks, and toques.
Allora ciao, io mi chiamo Professore Dave, io ti voglio insegnare tutte le cose sulla scienza. Parliamo di fisica, di chimica, biologia, astronomia, matematica e tante altre cose. Guardami su YouTube, arrivederci. Hey everyone, this is Professor Dave. I want to teach you about all kinds of things regarding science. I want to tell you about physics. I want to tell you about chemistry, biology, astronomy, math, and many, many more things. Come check me out on YouTube. The channel is called Professor Dave Explains. Take it easy.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave Explains.
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. In the early 1920s, farmers in Germany were noticing degraded soil conditions and a deterioration in the health and quality of their crops and livestock, and this came to the attention of Rudolf Steiner. An Austrian philosopher and esotericist, Rudolf Steiner was the pioneer of Waldorf Steiner education, anthroposophical medicine, and biodynamic agriculture, all of which are still practiced today. Biodynamic wines, yogurts, superfoods, and cosmetics are sold at a premium price. Why? What is it that biodynamic certification assures us of that isn't a part of regular organic agricultural practice? Well, biodynamic farming methods are similar to organic farming methods in that they prohibit the use of GMOs, synthetic chemicals, fertilizers or pesticides, but there's an added layer of philosophy and Steiner-prescribed methods and practices on top of the standard no chemicals rule. And I know all matter is composed of chemicals, it drives me batty too. From biodynamics.com, quote, biodynamics is ultimately not just a set of alternative agricultural methods, but a way of seeing and understanding the natural world. Steiner called for and pioneered a new form of science, which he called spiritual science, that could grapple with both the material and non-material or spiritual aspects of reality. Biodynamic farmers work to develop their capacity to sense and observe the more subtle forces at work in nature, and to use their own insights to further enhance the vitality of their farms. The biodynamic methods are thus in a continuous state of evolution and individualization. As part of his work on a new approach to science, Steiner also developed, together with a number of colleagues, a set of unique scientific methods for demonstrating the presence of life forces in nature and for evaluating the quality and vitality of food and soil. These methods, sometimes called the picture-forming methods, are finding growing acceptance in scientific circles in Europe. These and other traditional forms of scientific research have consistently demonstrated the benefits of biodynamic methods. End quote. Well, spiritual science. Spiritual science looks into that which is beyond science as we define it. It deals with the supernatural concepts, which are not empirically derived and are neither reproducible nor testable. Yet, Steiner declared it to be scientific regardless, and this mode of thinking is seen throughout all of the endeavours he established. What are the scientifically proven benefits of biodynamic agriculture? Well, they're indistinguishable from regular organic farming methods. Compared to conventional agricultural methods, organic and biodynamic farms tend to have higher earthworm populations and increased biomass, but lower yields of produce. The extra work that biodynamic farmers put in to meet with Steiner's methods is quite astounding, though. An example of the sort of practices that Steiner prescribed for biodynamic farmers is the preparation and use of Biodynamic Preparation 500, BD 500, a crop spray used to inoculate soil. BD 500 must be prepared in very specific ways. In early autumn, a farmer is to take an empty horn from a cow which has had a calf and fill it with the fresh manure of a cow which has grazed on biodynamically worked pasture. The horn is then to be buried underground in a fertile area of a field or garden until spring, when it's dug up and the contents of the horn are removed and stored in a loose-lidded glass or earthenware jar in peat or soil away from any chemicals. BD 500 is applied at a rate of 35 grams of preparation in 13 litres of water per acre. It is to be mixed in a vessel made of wood, clay, copper or stainless steel, and the vessel must not be overfilled. Water must be clean from a dam or tank. If using city water, leave overnight to allow chemicals in the water to evaporate. Proper stirring technique is important. Begin by stirring in one direction until a vortex appears, then reverse the direction until you create another one. Continue stirring and changing direction for 1 hour. Stirring small amounts of preparation in large amounts of water is referred to as dynamizing and is said to transfer forces and energy from the preparation into the water. BD 500 needs to reach the ground in the form of droplets. To apply to large areas of land, use a backpack sprayer. Smaller areas can be treated by dipping a hand brush made of horsehair or another natural material into a bucket of preparation and flicking it over the soil. What's the point of it all? It's said that the sphere of activity of the horn manure preparation is the soil life and root zone of the plant, that it improves soil humus, that it affects the dynamics of plant growth from germination to harvest. It's best applied at the beginning of the growing season on a cloudy afternoon where soil is moist and on fields that are uncultivated or freshly turned. There are several other preparations. A similar cow horn one using powdered quartz, several for improving compost involving various herbs and animal organs. BD 502 is made from dried yarrow flowers, placed in a stag's bladder in spring, then hung from a tree until autumn, buried in an earthenware container until the next spring. Then 1/10 of a teaspoon is to be placed in the middle of a cubic metre of compost, where it, quote, brings light forces into the soil via its connection with sulphur, helping spirit to penetrate matter and enables it to attract trace elements. Important for reproduction and growth, Venus forces are said to manifest in yarrow. End quote. From a biodynamics guide, quote, it's ideal to follow the application times from the biodynamic calendar to optimize cosmic influence. End quote. Yes, biodynamics incorporates an astrological calendar. Using the phases of the moon to organize when to plant, fertilize, and harvest kind of makes sense when you're living in a society which is lacking calendars. And I suppose it still serves as a sensible enough way to track the passing of time and seasons, But the magical thinking of astrology that's incorporated into these calendars strikes me as quite unnecessary. During the 90s and early 2000s, if there wasn't a poster of an independent cinema's yearly program stuck behind the toilet door of a share house I lived in or visited, there was almost certainly a moon planting poster in its place. It's a fairly pervasive belief, by no means limited to hardcore alternative gardeners, with its pseudoscientific claims that the gravity wrought by the moon has a notable effect on the water within plants and soil. Biodynamics makes the further assertion that the constellations impact growth and fertility. From biodynamic.org.uk, quote, "Since ancient times, the 12 zodiac constellations have been associated with each of the 4 elements. 3 constellations are connected to each element, and each element is related to a part of the plant: earth, root; water, leaf; air, flower; fire, fruit. For good carrots and earth, root days should be chosen. For lettuce, a water, leaf day. Beans and apples, a fire, fruit day, etc." End quote. It all seems incredibly prescriptive to me. There's no room for trialling different and potentially more efficient or economical methods. Everything is done by the now 90-year-old Steiner book. Some of the principles found within biodynamics are ones that I too value: the responsible stewardship of land, recognition of ecosystems and microclimates, minimising waste. But we can be ethical, ecologically aware and appreciative agriculturalists, or in my case, home gardeners, without the need for dated prescriptive methods or magical thinking. As for life forces, why do we need supernatural ones influenced by constellations to be in awe of? As a home gardener, I feel a sense of amazement at what I see unfold around me. Seeds which contain dormant life being awakened by the right conditions, microcosms of animals, plants and fungi, the shapes, textures and colours of leaves, fruit, flowers and bark, learning how to adjust the properties of soil to help a plant thrive, witnessing photosynthesis and nutrient uptake, and genetic manipulation by selective breeding of plants. I'm fascinated by it all. So when somebody tells me that their method of alternative gardening or agriculture is more holistic or considered because they're adopting supernatural beliefs into their practice, I really want to ask them, isn't what's actually there, what's observable, amazing enough? There's a quote from Douglas Adams of which I'm particularly fond, and in the context of this report it can be taken quite literally. Quote, "Isn't it enough to see that a garden is beautiful without having to believe that there are fairies at the bottom of it too?" End quote.
Hey, Adrienne.
Hi, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yep, I'm stocking up on this imitation maple syrup from Australia.
Imitation? Imitation? No. You need to buy the real thing from Canada.
But I saw the TV commercial and it said that noted pancake eating expert Richard Saunders says it's the best maple syrup money can buy, and 60% of people preferred it in a blind taste test. Everyone knows it's the best.
Oh, come on, Susan. You know better than that. That's the argument from authority.
It is?
Or is it the argument from popularity? It might be another logical fallacy. I'm not sure.
Really? If only we had a way of finding out.
Hello, everyone.
Oh my, it's the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
Yes, that's right. But how did you know who I am?
I listened to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Also, didn't you used to be the tooth fairy?
Oh, yes. I remember you. I'll never forget your left upper lateral incisor. Would you like it back?
No, it's okay. You keep it.
Hey, skeptical fairy godmother angel, what are you doing here in the supermarket?
I've come to tell you that you can find out about 40 different logical fallacies on YouTube in one handy location. Listen to each one to hear an explanation and examples of how they might be used.
Oh.
Just go to tinyurl.com/logicalzone and you'll find all the logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma with handy time codes to get to the exact one you want.
Who is Michelle Bickersma?
Oh, just a friend of mine.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Thank you, skeptical fairy godmother angel. I guess you'll disappear in a puff of smoke and thunder now, eh?
Not quite yet. I have a bit of shopping to do. Susan?
Yes?
Where do I find the Australian maple syrup?
What? No. Come with me, so-called skeptical fairy. This is real maple syrup from Canada. Made with real maple.
Now it's time once again to dive back into the Trove archive and other archives from around the world, digitized newspapers going back many, many, many years. A wealth of information for research. It's amazing to think you can sit at your home and type away and discover all sorts of newspaper archives and records, information, stories, reports, events, an invaluable resource. And in keeping with our look at paranormal, and in this case, around the time that the skeptical movement was really getting started, we're going to visit once more the age-old battle. Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty, the Doctor and the Master. In this case, another look at James Randi and Uri Geller. And we find ourselves in the year 1976 on the 11th of February in the Red Bank Register. And this story is by Linda Ellis. Ransom. When you ring the doorbell, a mechanical laugh pearls forth. The gape-mouthed gargoyle mounted on the entryway at 51 Lenox Avenue then asks ominously, "What evil lurks in the hearts of men?" and answers, "The shadow knows." James, the amazing Randi, who has this amazing door, says the shadow isn't the only one who knows about evil. He says so in a new book, The Magic of Uri Geller, in which he accuses Geller, a young Israeli psychic, of chicanery and fraud. Now I'll quickly pause here to say I have a copy of this book in front of me here, which was later retitled to be The Truth About Uri Geller. And it says, one of the most eye-popping exposés of the decade about psychic claims and magic, James Randi, the amazing Randi. And this particular issue I have was copyrighted 1982, and it's one of the classics of skeptical investigation to this very day. It's quite extensive. A recommended book. Now, normally I try to do Randi impressions when I do these quotes from him, but I think I'll forego that today because there's quite a lot of quotes here from Randi, so I think you'll understand. I am a fake, a phony, but I am an entertainer, a magician. I say so. Mr. Randi declares. He, Geller, is a phony, but he claims to be a second messiah. He does nightclub magician tricks and claims they are not magic, but a result of psychic powers. He is a charlatan. The master of legerdemain alleges in interviews and in his book. In 1972, according to the Ransom author's book, Mr. Geller convinced Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell and the prestigious Stanford Research Institute, SRI, that he, Mr. Geller, could read minds, foretell events, and with sheer psychic energy distort magnetic fields, streams of electrons, and solid metallic objects. Mr. Randi said in an interview that once Mr. Mitchell became a believer, he, Mitchell, financed Mr. Geller's trip to California. The SRI established the psychic as a consultant involved in psychic research at a stipend of $100 a day plus expenses. Today, Mr. Randi said, Mr. Geller is in Mexico searching for buried gold with psychic tools. Psychic phenomena include clairvoyance, awareness of events and objects that lie outside the perimeters of the five senses, psychokinesis, mental ability to influence physical objects, and precognition, foreknowledge of events. There is a running dispute amongst scientists, laymen, magicians, and psychics as to the truth of psychic claims. Mr. Randi, in the softcover book, with sales at this date of 300,000, writes and illustrates his thesis that Geller's supposed metal bending abilities are merely tricks accomplished by sleight of hand, that his claims of having been tested under rigorous scientific conditions are a crock of nonsense. Geller's telepathic abilities are demonstrated by tired conjuring dodges. Mr. Randi writes, that have been used for a century and which depend on loose control for their success. He has chosen to be tested by men of science who have already declared themselves believers in paranormal nonsense. A former nightclub magician in Israel, Geller has made wild claims of wondrous accomplishment that never took place. The necromancer notes in his book, in 1971, Geller was found guilty in Israel of breach of promise, of defrauding, in that he promised to perform feats of telepathy, parapsychology, hypnotism, and telekinesis, while in fact he merely employed sleight of hand and stage tricks. The author states in his book, which is going into its third printing by Ballantine Books, the magic of Uri Geller is studded with favorable reviews about Randi's research from scientists, academics, and writers. Example: a fascinating dissection of Uri Geller's humbuggery, a healthy antidote to charlatanism on all levels, writes Carl Sagan, a professor of astronomy and space sciences at Cornell University. To the delight of two small children and the distortion of two of this reporter's teaspoons, Mr. Randi proceeded to demonstrate that with sleight of hand and a line of patter, he could bend a metal utensil in half while its owner held the working end. Two of a daily register photographer's keys met the same fate. Mr. Randi then reversed a watch precisely 1 hour with 4 people watching, we thought, his every move, and one of us holding fast to the watch workings. Mr. Randi describes in his book how he has performed every trick in Mr. Geller's bag on talk shows and before scientists and media people. In his book, Mr. Randi describes how the tricks are done with standard magician trickery. On The Tonight Show in 1974, after Johnny Carson set up airtight controls at Mr. Randi's suggestion, nothing that Mr. Geller attempted during a 20-minute session seemed to work, according to a March cover story in Time magazine. And I'll quickly break in here to say that appearance of Uri Geller on Johnny Carson, where Randi introduced the controls to stop any cheating, is available on YouTube, and I'll link to that in this week's show notes. It's certainly worth watching. Mr. Randi said his exposure of Mr. Geller's performances is essential to reveal the professed psychic for the charlatan that Mr. Randi, and many others, according to the book, believe he is. Mr. Randi said he wrote the book because Geller is changing the thinking of a whole generation of Americans, making them believe in things that go bump in the night. The prestidigitationalist proposes to stop that, he said. I want people to stop believing in things that don't exist, Mr. Randi said in the interview. Lies, irrationality, and deceit cannot be a positive influence, the magician maintains. Beyond that, Mr. Randi said, "There is the Geller effect, the ability of Geller to convince people that he was sent here to save mankind. It's gullibility and hard to battle. He has charmed many people," Mr. Randi said in discussing his reasons for putting the magic together. "He really appeals to the young in revolt against an older generation. He'll fund a full-blown religion if he's not stopped," Mr. Randi continued. "He has charisma. Many people want him to succeed and save the world with psychic powers. Some scientists still believe in him," Mr. Randi said in the interview. "Those few believe that if they cannot explain something scientifically, they figure it has to be supernatural. They don't understand that unexplained does not mean unexplainable. Some scientists think they can't be fooled." Mr. Randi said Mr. Geller explains his failures under controlled conditions as proof of his reality. Mr. Randi wrote in his book that Mr. Geller claims a safety valve when he fails. When he succeeds, he claims success as a psychic. When he fails, he claims that negative vibrations, which only affect true psychics, caused his failure. The magician author said, "Our local sorcerer's first and last personal encounter with Mr. Geller was in February of 1973, when the Runsum resident was asked by Time magazine to sit in on a session between the magazine's editors and Mr. Geller while a cover story on psychics was being planned. I was introduced to Geller as a reporter. I dutifully made notes and asked questions. Geller did his routine, and it was so transparent. I duplicated his entire routine as soon as he left," Mr. Randi said. Mr. Randi said he has a standing offer to Mr. Geller to sue him if magic is libelous. And magic, of course, referring to the book. "He's never communicated with me, so I assume he knows it's all true," the writer said. Randi's revelations contributed to our first story on Geller, which charged, in effect, that SRI had been hoodwinked by an Israeli magician, writes Leonard Jaroff, senior editor of Time magazine, in his introduction to the book. No matter how clever the next Geller is, James Randi will be there, his eyes gleaming. Mr. Jaroff writes, ready to do battle for legitimate magic everywhere. And we have a photograph accompanying this article. There's James Randi, roughly, what should we say, in his mid-40s, looking intently at a spoon he's just bent. And the caption reads, Sacrificial Spoon. Using sleight of hand, theatrics and distractions, James the Amazing Randi of Runsum demonstrates how a metal spoon can be distorted without force. In a new book, The Magic of Uri Geller, the magician sets out to prove that the young psychic bends his spoons by the same magician's tricks and not by psychic powers. I think it's very important to revisit this time in history because it's not only the period that sort of spurred on the modern skeptical movement, but it's a lesson to us all in how scientists, media people, everyday people in the street can be fooled by magicians' tricks, which is the whole idea of magic and conjuring, but how they can be distorted. Those same tricks and illusions can be distorted to benefit someone like Uri Geller making these sort of claims. And thousands upon thousands of people will believe it and still do to this very day. Although for many people now, the name Uri Geller is simply an unknown. It's too far back in the past, and in a way it's too obscure. And as I have said many, many times, that's a big clue. It's a big clue, it's a big hint, it's a big indication to us all that his claims were baseless, because if they were real, if people really could bend metal using psychic and paranormal powers, and that was established in the 70s, by now it would simply be part of our society. And somehow it isn't.
So again, that comes from the pages of the Red Bank Register from the 11th of February 1976. And don't forget that you too can enjoy many hours of research and digging out interesting articles if you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au or your local online newspaper archive, no matter where you are around the world. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week, and thank you to those wonderful people who contribute via Patreon or PayPal at skepticzone.tv, and thank you to those new Patreons just come on board. It means that I can keep bringing you the Skeptic Zone every week. And for those who are interested, I also appeared on the last episode of The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe as a guest rogue, and had a lot of fun with my old friends on that podcast. Coming up on next week's show, let me have a look here on my little system here on my iPad where I catalogue all the upcoming shows. Okay, next week's show. Oh, it's blank. That means it's a mystery. That means I can't predict the future. That means we'll all have to wait till next week to find out. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Hello. Where is it? There. Very noisy. Hello to all those people who listen after the music for the Easter egg, that is the dice game. Sometimes I roll a die, and you use your whatever powers you wish to predict what numbers are going to come up. And this is a 10-sided die this week. I'm going to roll it 3 times in my dice machine, kindly donated by my friend Greg Doray in the Bay Area. Roll number 1. Here we go. I'm going to rattle the dice, put it in the machine, and 4. Number 1. Roll number 1 is 4. Next time, here we go, and 4. Am I detecting a pattern here? 4 and 4. One more, and here it comes. Well, it's not a 4. Susan, it's not a 5. 10. There we are. Today's winning numbers. And what do you win? You win a chance to listen to next week's episode. 4, 4, and 10.